what's up, y'all? It's NickJoe98 Gaming coming out of nowhere with another video. So yeah, it's been a little minute since my last update. A couple things have gone on since then. I think I was engaged at that time. I don't know if I updated you guys on that. No longer engaged. That's a whole other story in itself. But that's not the topic we're going to be talking about today. Today, I think we should probably be talking about the reason why the Army can't keep their people. A lot of people say how the Army has this issue of manpower, and a lot of people blame recruiting. People don't want to join. Well, I kind of want to blame a little bit of retention, because I came up on a couple of potential reenlistments, and they kind of botched them. So to get into details of it, I came up on my active duty contract expiration just over a year back in December of 2023. I was negotiating with them, and they couldn't really do anything because just the whole active duty contract, they were, just to put it simply, screwing me over the entire time. It was also unfortunate that I had really bad leadership the entire time. Shout out to Sergeant Boyle for not only screwing me and a bunch of other good soldiers in that unit, but just the whole entire unit's integrity and trust, because that did really irreparable damage for years to come. So, really cool thing you did there. And I'm absolutely shamelessly name dropping her because that was awful. Outside of that, shout out to Master Sergeant Waller for setting me back several years in my career because you didn't want to come in on a weekday and proctor my Fire Officer 1 test. These are all other stories that I'm definitely going to make videos on because I can't do it all in one video. But I'm just generally kind of saying how the Army has screwed up in taking care of their soldiers during an active contract. They don't get them to stay because they can't incentivize them. They can't give them a reason to stay. It's ridiculous. So the whole entirety of my contract, outside of like my first year I was at Fort Stewart, I was a pretty good PT stud. I was never good at the range at Fort Stewart because, shout out to Fort Stewart, you have the worst ranges I've ever shot at, because Fort Leonard Wood shot a 33, Fort Carson shot a 35, Fort Stewart, I couldn't shoot over 28. So fix your shit, guys. That's ridiculous. I'm a pretty good soldier when it comes to, just the basic stuff like that. Now, when it comes to fire certs, I actually had to find out from not my unit's NCO, but a different unit's NCO, like how to go about not only fire certs, but there's a different way to do other certs, online courses through ATARs, and that's how you get promotion points. So shout out to Sergeant Bryant. He was the one who showed me all that. So big shout out to him. Like, he was actually a big reason why I even got far at all in my Army career. But it's crazy that it took an NCO from a whole other unit to actually propel me through my career and not an NCO in my own unit, because they were just snoozing away, kind of caring about their own jobs. You think you'd care about the soldiers in your own unit. Anyways, I'm glad I wasn't an NCO like that, because that was kind of useless. Anyway, getting back to the topic at hand here, stuff like that is not going to incentivize a soldier to re-enlist and stay in any longer. And so the reason I bring up the reason that I wasn't a bad soldier is because I was bringing up that I want to go, because obviously I was going to be a firefighter for life. I liked, going into the Army as a firefighter. And I think that was a little bit of the reason I didn't like the Army, was because the leadership, just kind of the culture of the Army, they just treated each other like crap. And the firefighter part, that was a lot more like family oriented. Like, they treated each other like brothers and sisters, actually. Well, because you had to go live with them for 24 to 48 hours at a time, and you didn't have any options. So, like, even if you had beef with someone, you had to talk it out. You couldn't just, like, I guess you could kind of live with it, but it was different in the Army, because like then you got rank, and you got people who will use that rank to give you an Article 15 if you give them the slightest bit of sass. Shout out to Sergeant Boyle again. It just doesn't give a reason for soldiers to re-enlist. And then there's the whole, it opens the door for you to be a DoD firefighter rather than a military firefighter, which pays so much better. You have better hours. Anyways, that's a whole different sort of thing. But where I was going with being a decent soldier is I was asking for all these schools like EMT, Hazmat Tech, even Swift Water Rescue, and they would not give me a lick of attention. They wouldn't even look my way to if there was an extra school. But a new soldier that came in the unit, line up PVT fuzzy straight out of AIT. And I was just sitting there looking at it. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, this is going to be my career for the rest of my life. These guys might not even be in the Army any longer than I am. And I am going to dedicate my life to this. Like, if you hit E5, you have a chance to go teach at the fire academy there at St. Angelo. That's what I was hoping to go do if I hit E5 in time. But I hit E5 right before I got out, and I felt like they were going to dangle that in front of me, so I just straight up got out. But how are you going to wait all this time and right before I got out, give me E5 and promise all this stuff? And I'm like, no, your time for that is over. If you wanted to give me EMT and Hazmat Tech and all this cool stuff, you should have given me that way before. Give me a reason to stay in before I come up on my expiration of contract. You don't that don't work like that. Same thing happened now that I have completed my reserve contract, because I did about a year and some change in the reserve. And so what you do with a year and change, you ask to go get certed out more. So I asked for fire officer, ISO, hazmat tech, swift water. They were pretty honest with me. They're like, all right, well, if you get your ones, we can get you the other stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do it. And then I sent them classes, and they're like, all right, well, we can send them up the chain of command, and we'll see what we can do. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound very freaking promising. Can we do a little better? And they're like, we'll see what we can do. I'm like, okay. And so they slotted me for a BLC class in the middle of summer. I'm like, this isn't going to help me in my career, like, at all. And by that point, it was an E6 class. This wasn't even an E5 class. It was an E6 class now. I'm like, I need to get my stuff to get certed to E5. I need incident safety officer, and I need fire inspector 1 to get certed to E5. Why are we screwing around with something the E6s need? And he was like, well, this is just so we can get out of the way. And so then I go to the airport to go to that BLC class, and turns out he used my old government travel card from Fort Stewart that was canceled. And he has the audacity to say when I get to the airport, well, do you think you can just pay for the flight? When he knows dang well that I wasn't getting paid for any drill up to that point. And you heard that right. I wasn't getting paid for drill up until that point. Actually, beyond that point, I didn't even get a paycheck for drill up until about a month ago. And they are still putting debts on my account to not pay me. To get back on track here, they put me into stuff they wanted for them to look better. They didn't want stuff for me to succeed. They wanted stuff for I guess their unit to look better. And so now I come up on my, final dates for, drill. I'm like, oh, dude, you should reenlist. You should reenlist. I'm like, yeah, no. It was straight up a hard no. Up until this last drill weekend, and then I'm like, dude, this unit's actually really fun to be around. I'd really hate to leave them. And so it all comes down to this last drill weekend, and I'm rooming with the first sergeant of the unit. I take a shower one day, get out of the shower, and I'm thinking about it, and I hop out of the shower. I'm like, hey, first sergeant. And so I was like, I'll reenlist if y'all slot me in a hazmat tech class. I said, I don't want to promise, I don't want to guarantee, I want a slot. I want you guys to put my name on paper in a hazmat tech class, like a course, and I'm going to be there. And he's like, I don't think we can do that, but I'll tell the person who handles classes about that. I'm like, all right. And so he tells him about that, I guess some point between then and when we went to dinner together. And he was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm like, well, I guess reenlistment's not going to happen then. So therein lies the issue of the whole staffing of the Army. The Army does what they want. They don't do what the soldiers want. So then you come up with your expiration terms of service for a soldier, and then they're like shocked that they don't want to reenlist. Like, yeah, no shit, they don't want to reenlist. You treated them like they were a second thought for 8 years of their lives. You never took their opinion into account one time for a class, for a slot. Like, dude, you got to prioritize their career, their life, especially like for someone. I'm going to get a little selfish here for a second, for especially for someone who loves fire as much as I do. You absolutely have to encourage that love for that job. You have to go send them to classes. Obviously, that's a whole different thing as like conventions, like IAFF stuff, because that doesn't really go hand in hand with the Army. But you have to go encourage that behavior, because if you don't, then you have a bunch of those weekend warriors, like those guys who arrive on the weekends. Some of them are electricians, some are plumbers, like some of them aren't even firefighters. I came to that unit with 5 years of firefighting experience and most of my certs up to E5. Some guys that are E5s and E6s come over as like Cav Scouts and MPs. They're not even firefighters. None of them even set foot in a burning building. And you're telling me you can't prioritize me as a firefighter of 5 years who actually knows what the hell is going on in the job? Like, that's ridiculous, man. There's got to be a change in the culture. There's your issue with your retention, Army. I know you're probably never going to listen to this and you're probably never going to care, but how you're going to fix it is you listen to soldiers. And I know you're never going to listen to people, but that's how you do it. Anyways, that's my thoughts on this. I'm very opinionated when it comes to fire and Army because I know a lot about each of them. But I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Hope you guys were engaged. I know it probably didn't excite a bunch of the people who are typically on my channel, but I do appreciate the watch. So anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.